So today I decided to speak about a biblical text, or to start with a biblical text that is in the Gospel of Mark. Give them some food for yourselves. And I think that's biblical story has a lot to teach us about why we are Vincentians. So let me start with the thematic of these days. It's written in French, but I'll read it in English. Why? It doesn't want to go back. Okay, here. Blessed Frédéric Ozanam, of whom we heard yesterday, emphasized the importance of responding actively to a changing world and embracing new opportunities. And I open a parenthesis. We are, in case you didn't notice, we are in a changing world, aren't we? Okay? And we can be discouraged by that, but I think that Frédéric Ozanam is asking us rather to see these changes as the fact of having new opportunities. In the spirit of our founders, the society continues to renew itself, adapting and evolving in response to shifting conditions in our communities. And I want to salute the fact that you're so numerous here. I think that you take that challenge very seriously. And I'm delighted to see all of you. I'm delighted also to see that there are some young, new persons around us. I will look at the ceiling because we're all young at heart, of course, but there's future for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. So I'm reading in Gospel of Mark, chapter 6. I will be speaking in English, of course, but for every biblical text, you have on the left-hand side the French version, and on the right-hand side the English. So Jesus was aware of the needs of the people that he was proclaiming the good news to. And we are told in Mark chapter 6, verse 6, that that's Jesus, went around to the villages in the vicinity teaching. And he saw that there was lots of work to do. And what did he do? He decided that even though he is God, he has all power, but he doesn't want to save us without us, I would say. He decides to ask the 12 to be his partners. And let's just imagine for a moment today that we're in the sandals of the 12. We are, as Vincentians, called to be the one that are helping Jesus to fulfill his mission. And you see, I highlighted the fact that he summoned the 12 and began to send them 2 by 2. So that beginning that took place on that day is continuing today through us. Not only us, because we're not the only one being sent, but as Vincentians, we are also sent. And I know that you are all always sent 2 by 2. Just remember how, I'm sure that many of you visit houses of people who have asked for relief, and you do that 2 by 2. I would like you to think of your mission when you do that as continuing the mission of Christ, who went from places to places to bring the good news. Now, he gave them authority over unclean spirits. Ooh, that's scary. But you know, you have to, when you think of the unclean spirits, just think of the changing conditions of the people we try to help. Many of them are faced with poverty. We saw that yesterday. I was deeply touched by the witnessing of Dr. Vigo. Okay, so, and also that these people are always, like all of us, I think, are faced with difficult situations at the level of mental health. And we're not there to judge, but we are confronted with unclean spirits too. I'm not trying to see the devil everywhere. I'm just trying to say that we are faced with difficult situations at that. And what did Jesus say? He instructed them to take nothing for the journey, but a walking stick. That's why I took my cane. no food, no sack, no money in their belts. Well, that's strange, you know. If you send me, I will ask for one thing in addition to my walking cane. And with an unlimited funding, please. In today's world, it's a bit difficult to go without any of these things. But at the same time, we have to realize that in the world of Jesus, hospitality was a given. And that if you go somewhere and they offer you something, maybe out of they're so poor you don't want, just take the time to sit with them, have a coffee, have a glass of water, and treat them like persons. Okay? And what you have to give them is not out of your own richness. It's really what the Lord gave us to share with our poor brothers and sisters. Okay? No, they are ever to wear sandals. That's pretty good if you have to walk miles and miles. Not a second tunic. Well, I brought a couple of Roman collar shirt myself, but anyway. So they went off and they preached repentance. They drove out many demons. They anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. Now that's, if the only weapon you have is some olive oil that was blessed and you give it does miracles. I can tell you that. Okay, last weekend I had 150 kids confirmed. So my right thumb is very well oiled. But it does lots of miracles. And if you ever had a chance of witnessing the sacrament of the anointing of the sick, that's one of the most touching events that a priest can live, really. And you probably live that. I have many stories, but if I want to finish on time, I will not tell you all my stories. Maybe only one. Do you mind if I cheat a bit? Only one. I went once with a family on the deathbed of their uncle, and he said, Father Yvan, because I was not Bishop Yvan then, I was Father Yvan, and he said, he will not be able to recognize you. He's not speaking for the last 5 days. I said, I'm sure, even though he's unable to tell me that he understands me, that he will hear and listen. And a miracle occurred. I'm not the one who made the miracle. Let me reassure you, a week later I was celebrating his funeral, so let's say he died anyway. But when I came close to the bed, took his hand, and I said, René, this is Father Yvan. I'm here to give you the anointing of the sick. Do you agree? And he said loudly, yes, and I'm glad you're here. 5 days, he didn't say a word. Okay? And it's not because I was there. I think it was really the need of he was waiting for this to happen so that he could let go. He wanted to see his own family, and so really, even though we feel we have very little to give to other people, sometimes we feel that. Just think of that situation. Think of Mother Teresa, who said that what she did with her community was a drop in the sea. But she said also, if that drop was missing, the sea wouldn't be the same. So you're important. And you do more good than you can see, I would say. So if you see at the end of the slide, there are 3 dots there, because I skipped the part where they speak about John the Baptist. Not that I don't like John the Baptist, but it's kind of a parenthesis. It's in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus never does anything without his disciples. So he sent them in mission, and it's like if the narrative is put on pause for a while, to give time to the apostles to go on their mission and come back to Jesus. And during that time, to give enough time to the apostles to do their mission, Mark is narrating the story, the end of life of John the Baptist. Beware of women dancing. Not like yesterday. But that's how poor John the Baptist, he lost his head. So, chapter 6, verse 30, a little jump ahead. The apostles gathered together with Jesus and reported all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." Isn't that what we're doing every year at our national formation? We are withdrawing from the crowd. We're together. We were all, for the whole year, we have been missionaries. We continue to be, but we take these 3 days away, not because we love the food, we love the hotel commodity. No, because we need that moment being together in brotherhood. And this is also a moment when we can focus more not only on our mission, but on the origin of our mission, who is Jesus himself. And look, just think of what you do in in Vincent store. People were coming and going in great numbers, and they had no opportunity even to eat. Does that sound familiar? I would say that this situation of the apostles at their moment of life in the gospel is very similar to what we Vincentians have to go through throughout the year. Am I wrong in saying that? Well, you don't seem very enthusiastic. Take another sip of coffee. Am I right about saying that? Yes. Good. And so Jesus took them away. They went off in the boat by themselves to a deserted place. Don't tell people that I think that Hamilton is a deserted place. But a place apart, really. Right? So, but the problem is that people were still hungry for what Jesus had to give them. So they saw them leaving, and many came to know about it from all the towns and arrived at the place before them. They hastened there on foot. When he disembarked, he saw the vast crowd. His heart was moved with pity for them, for they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. Now, let's take a moment in our heart and put in front of our eyes those people whom we know and whom we serve as Vincentians. If they are there at the door of our stores or wherever we meet them, it's because they have a great need. And it's interesting to see that Jesus was moved with pity for them. Now let me say a word about that verb. At my first homily, I said, how many of you speak Greek? I think I was the only one who lifted his hand. My mother she was not very happy when I was using my knowledge like that. She always said to me, Yvan, culture is like peanut butter. The less you have, the more you spread it. En français, la culture, c'est comme la confiture. Moins on en a, plus on l'étend. So let me spread some peanut butter on your toast this morning. The verb here that is used is splangizomai. The splanca are the bowels here, your move, and it's always also designating the uterus of a woman. And I'm not a woman. I look like a 5-month pregnant, I know, but I will never be a woman either. But there were situations in my life where I felt so much empathy for someone I was serving that I was moved to my belly. Did you ever feel that expression? And it's a mother seeing her child suffering. She's moved here. That sensation of being touched. In French we say ému jusqu'aux tripes. So it's really you're moved to your inside, around the uterus. And it's a motherly love manifesting itself in Jesus. That's not a verb that is often used in the gospel, but for instance, when in the prodigal son, when the father sees his son coming from afar, he is moved to pity. The same verb, splangizomai. So next time you're in a party and there's no dancing, you can say, did you hear about splangizomai? So Jesus wanted to have some relaxed time with his disciples, but he decided that it was more important to answer the needs of that crowd who was hungry for meaning, for food, and for life. Not only food for living, well, that's essential. If you don't have a good breakfast, you can teach everything you want to just but also food. They are hungry for meaning in their life. And just think, I'm again thinking of the witnessing we had yesterday. Think of all the people you serve. Of course, they are in dire needs physically, but they're also in dire needs in their life for meaning. And that's where, without preaching the gospel, you are most probably the only gospel page they will encounter in their day. Not because of what you say, but because of what you are and because of what you do. But it's important for us to realize that why we do it, because we're continuing the mission of Christ in a very concrete way. Now what's following is very interesting. By now, it was already late, 9, 10, and 20 seconds. I have 20 minutes left to speak what I want to say. It's getting late. No, it's late in the day. And his disciples, now it's interesting, not only the apostles, not only the bishops, but all those who were following Jesus. Normally the title apostle is given to the 12 who were closer to Jesus, whom he chose. And the term disciples are all those who were walking with him. So they're a bit worried now. They approach Jesus and they say to him, this is a deserted place. Again, they were not in Hamilton. It is already very late. Dismiss them. So, I forgot to dismiss them so that they can go to the surrounding farms and villages and buy themselves something to eat. Okay. And I put in red here Luke chapter 9, verse 12. So, instead of buying themselves something to eat, in the Gospel of Luke, we have something interesting because Luke translated that as release them so that they might find lodging and provisions. Lodging and provisions. I wanted to highlight that difference between Mark and Luke, because when we read a gospel passage, we have to limit, buy something to eat. Let's do that concretely and limit ourselves to that. But there's more to that than providing food for one day for one person or for her family. We have been speaking a lot about the lodging crisis, haven't we? There was a workshop yesterday about lodging. Am I right? Yes. Okay. And you all know that we are facing a very difficult crisis all over Canada, but also all over the world. I don't know why we're facing that crisis, but we certainly are facing a crisis. Well, there are places in the earth on our earth where it's less difficult to spend the night outside. Try that in Ottawa, mid-January, -30. Not easy. So I think that sometimes the task is so big in front of us that we feel overwhelmed. How are we going to be able to feed all these people? How are we going to be able to find lodging for people? When I go out of my residence, in order to go to work, I often go, those who know Ottawa, I have to drive through Murray Street. At Murray, at the angle of King Edward, there's a Holiday Inn on the other side of the street to the left. But before the Holiday Inn, on my side of the street, there's the Shepherds of Good Hope Refuge. And they have a building to the left, a building to the right. And along the building to the right, the policemen call that stretch of sidewalk the beach. You know why? Day in, day out, whatever the weather, you have at least 150 homeless people staying there. Am I exaggerating, Richard? 150 average? And when they're not there, they're eating on the other side because it's lunchtime. And it's interesting because when they're away, there are volunteers who pick up all the garbage there. And they're doing a great job cleaning everything. You pass at the same place an hour later, you feel like you're in a garbage dump. It's incredible. And these people are very often under drug effect. They're alcohol, and I see very young people. I would judge about 20, 25, but they look older than I am. Life has been tough for them. I'm not there to judge why they are there, but it's really something that disturbs me. Splendizomai every morning. But what can we do? Not easy. So that's why I think that the disciples are in the same situation as they, Jesus, go, let them go. That's beyond what we are able to do. But Jesus is really bold, and he says, give them some food yourselves. Are there days as Vincentians when you feel that the more we do, the more deeds there are? Am I the only one thinking that way? So, and they said to Jesus, that's not possible. Are we to buy 200 days' wages worth of food and give it to them to eat? 200 days, that's nearly half a year's salary, a bit more than that. Just think of half your salary. And if there are 12 of you gathering that, will you be able to feed all these people? A week, maybe at the most. The challenges are great. And then Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. And I'm so delighted to be part of your group and to take part in this FNA am I saying FNA? Is that correct? ANF. I didn't translate, sorry. ANF. So, because I see all that you have and all that you give to people, and in a volunteer way. I give praise to God for you and for what you are and what you do. And what did the disciples have? 5 loaves and 2 fish. Sounds fishy, right? Not that meant for, there were 5,000 people on the grass there. You know, it reminds me of what we did here on Wednesday night when we started breaking the host. And the last one got a tiny little piece, really. Nearly microscopic. But it was still the body of Christ. So he gave orders to have them sit down in group on the green grass. And I don't know, I repeated the same. I must have been tired when I prepared those slides, sorry. The people took their places in rows by hundreds and fifties. That tells you how many people there were there. Then, and be attentive to what Jesus does here. Think of what I do or any priest does when he presides the Eucharist. Then, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he said the blessing, broke the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. This is really, these gestures are, the Eucharist has not been instituted yet, but that's exactly what Jesus will do with bread and wine on Holy Thursday. And the miracle is not that he was able to bless and give that, but these thousands of people, they all ate and were satisfied. It's a miracle. Do you see miracles in what you do as Vincentians? Yes? What? More coffee again? Do you see miracles in what you do as Vincentians?
Yes.
Yes. And I pray that we continue to see miracles. Do you want another little story before I continue with the gospel story? When I was a seminarian, after my 4 years of theology, I was teaching in our high school. I was not a priest yet, but I was in charge of the pastoral animation of the school. About 500 boys, only boys, sorry ladies. And at Christmas time, we decided to make a collection of unperishable food. In certain classes, there was a contest between the classes. There were places where we couldn't even reach the blackboard because there were too many cans between the teacher and the blackboard. But they were very proud of that. So I rented a car, a big trunk, and we went and we delivered those cans to a house that was called Maison Revivre. It was a house where a lady, a widow, had given all she had to buy that house, and she was welcoming former prisoners to help them reintegrate society. And her name is Colette Sanson. Those who live in Quebec City, you should know about Maison Revivre and Colette Sanson. So the pastoral team that was working with me, these kids of high school kids, we came and visited Mrs. Sanson, and we said, she explained to us that one of the worst days for her boys, she called them, they were all adults coming out of prison, was Christmas Eve. Because they're all alone. They have families, but their contact is broken, and they really feel unhappy, broken. It's a very difficult day. So Mrs. Sanson said to the first one who came to visit her at 8 o'clock on the 24th of December, you know, I have a réveillon to prepare, so you better do that quick. He did that quick. She opened her door, the door of her office, and there was about at least 50 guys lining up. What do you do? So Mrs. Sanson said a little prayer. She said, I will take care of your boys. You take care of my réveillon. And she continued to welcome till 6 o'clock, non-stop, these people. Around 12 noon, the phone rings, and there's a lady, catering service that wants to speak to Mrs. Sanson. So in between two interviews, she takes the phone and she says, Mrs. Sanson, I'm in Ottawa they say purveyor, but someone who prepares catering. I had a Christmas party dinner command of 350 people. They just canceled. Wow. And my food is ready. Wow. Would you like to, sorry, would you like to have that for your réveillon? She said, you're the answer to my prayer. And ever since that, until she died, that lady continued to provide the Christmas meal for these people. Isn't that something? Wow. Isn't that a miracle? Yeah. They all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 wicker baskets full of fragments of what was left of the fish. Those who ate of the loaves were 5,000 men. That's not counting the women and children. Imagine. There's somebody from Calgary who told me this morning, where is he? He said that we just built a church of 2,000 people. Where is that man from Calgary? Here he is. Stand up, please. So in his diocese, Calgary, they just built a 2,000 sitting place church. 2,000, eh? Yeah. How much million did you spend? 23 million, you said?
25 million.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the last 2 million. So just imagine, that's for 2,000 people. There were 5,000. The challenges are great, but miracles happen. There's one condition for the miracle to happen, is that we dare give our 5 loaves and our 2 fish. And I'm convinced that's what you do every day, without even thinking about it. But that's what you do. Am I right? Another sip of coffee. Am I right? Yes, I am. And God rejoices at that. Now, later, this was a miracle that continues today throughout your mission as, and I would dare to say, your vocation as Vincentians. And I would like to quote to you 2 letters that came later on, much later after the Gospel. One of the 12, James, writing to a Christian community. And he says that, "What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him?" This is a rhetorical question. What's the answer? No. Faith can save you, yes, but it has to be incarnated in works. If a brother or a sister has nothing to wear, this should sound familiar to a Vincentian, has no food for the day, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm, eat well," but you do not give them the necessities of the body, what good is this? Rhetorical question. No good at all. So also faith of itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Now that's something that should strengthen our commitment to our Vincentian way, because the source, the root of our commitment as Vincentians is certainly our faith. Okay? For it's a Catholic movement, it certainly is a Christian movement, but we deep down, call it whatever you want. I don't know if you go to church every Sunday, it's none of my business, but you're more than welcome if you want to come. What moves us from within is the presence of God, who is allowing us to see the poor next to us, not so much as a poor, than as a brother, a sister, who is starving for meaning in her life, and who is starving not only for food, but for brothers and sisters who will treat them like real people, with dignity. Another letter is, it's still James, sorry. "Indeed, someone may say, 'You have faith and I have works. Demonstrate your faith to me without works, and I will demonstrate my faith to you from my works.'" I would say that you have a lot to demonstrate. That's why I think that your mission, it's not to preach the gospel, but the way you do what you do as Vincentians is already a proclamation of the gospel. Now, this will show only if you are convinced of that. If you every morning gets up and says to the Lord, "I will do a little something for your folks here, if you want the miracle to happen, and if you want to use me to make it happen, please do so. But if you're not there, I would not be able to do the miracle." It's the disciples who gave the 5 bread, the loaves of bread, and the 2 fish. But it's Jesus who did the miracle. Remember that when you give your bread and your fish. In the letter of John, chapter 3, verse 17 and following. "If someone who has worldly means sees a brother," we can add a sister, "in need and refuses him compassion," not money, compassion, "how can the love of God remain in him? Children, let us love not in word or speech. I hope that I love as much as I speak, but in deed and truth. This is how we shall know that we belong to the truth and reassure our hearts before Him. Okay, the rest I didn't have time to put on my slideshow, but I would, and it's 9:29. I have 1 minute left. I might take 3 minutes more if you don't mind. I would like to conclude with a man named Saint Alexis of Rome. Do you know Saint Alexis of Rome? You don't know Saint Alexis of Rome? Well, you'll know him after this morning. I lived 6 years in Rome. 4 years for study purposes, and then I had 2 sabbaticals when I wanted to write a commentary on the Gospel of Luke. The commentary is not written, but I spent 2 more years in Rome. So basically, and I had visitors sometimes, and since I spoke a bit of Italian, they always asked me to give them a tour of Rome. I always started my tour of Rome on the Aventine, one of the 7 hills, because from there we could see, first of all, what the church, a basilica, is like. And I could explain that first, because for all the churches that we visited afterward, there was a splendid view on the Vatican from there, and there was the little church of Saint Alexis. That's where I discovered this story. Now I invoked Saint Wikipedia, and here's what I found. Alexis was the only son of a rich Roman senator. From his good Christian parents, he learned to be charitable to the poor. Does that ring a bell? Alexis wanted to give up his wealth and honors, but his parents had chosen a rich bride for him. Because it was their will, he married her. Yet, right on his wedding day, he obtained her permission to leave her for God. That's quite a story. Then, in disguise, he traveled to Syria in the east and lived in great poverty near the Church of Our Lady. One day, after 17 years, a picture of our Blessed Mother spoke to tell the people that this beggar was very holy. She called him the man of God. When he became famous, which was the last thing he wanted, he fled back to Rome. He came as a beggar to his own town. His own. His parents did not recognize him. Well, try fasting for 17 years, but I don't think you'll recognize me either. But they were very kind to all poor people, and so they let him stay there, in a corner, under the stair. And when you go in the courtyard of that church, which was his house, it's a rich neighborhood of Rome, you can still see the staircase under which he lived. So, Alexis lived for 17 years there. He used to go out to pray in church and to teach little children about God. The servants were often very mean to him, and though he could have ended all these sufferings just by telling his father who he was, he chose to say nothing. In other words, he really wanted to share the condition of those you serve. It was not only to give them something, but to share their life, their way of living. Lots of suffering. With great courage and strength of will that took. What great courage and strength of will that took. After Alexis died, his family, they saw that there was a note that is kind of stuck under in his fist, his right fist there. So they tried to open his hand, but it wasn't opening. So they prayed him, let the paper go. And what was written on the paper? I am your son. And he gave them details of his life as an infant that only him and them could know. And it's only after his death that they discovered that the beggar that was under their staircase was their son. And that his wife knew that this was her husband. So, why do I end with that story? Well, because I want to have a Kleenex party, everybody. No, it's because I think that as we are convinced that we're helping our brothers and sisters, sometimes we don't see them every day as our brothers and sisters. But I would invite you to look underneath your staircase outside your house when you go out every morning. And remember Alexis, who chose to be the poor brother, the poor son. And let's be aware that all those people whom we serve are our brothers and sisters. And that by helping them, of course we will not... Are you able to solve the problem of poverty in Canada? Well, we're working hard, but we win some battles, but the war is still waging, isn't it? So let's be convinced that by doing that, we continue the mission that Jesus gave to his disciples, sending them 2 by 2. And the only tools, instruments, richness we have to give them are our poor 5 loaves of bread, our poor 2 fish. But if we don't give our own poverty to our brothers and sisters, there'll be no miracle. Thank you for the miracle you are, and that you perform every day. Amen.